Hello, welcome to EA Live, our semi-weekly program where folks from EA, usually Mason, Pablo, and I talk with other folks that we know in the industry about Webflow and content and storytelling and running an agency and 3D design and all kinds of awesome stuff. Thanks for joining us today. Today, I am Kendra Rainey, the VP of Strategy and Content at Edgar Allen. And I have with me Amy Small, who is somebody that I've known for quite a while and is the EVP of Media Cause as well. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and we can talk about basically, we've known each other for a few years. I think Mason introduced us a while back, and we'll have coffee or tea or a Zoom chat. I don't know. We should do it more, but we were doing it fairly regularly there for a while. And just talking about what's it like to be in leadership at an agency? What's it like to manage people? What's it like to be a mom in the creative world and have a family and try to do all the things? So I'm really excited to have her here today to talk a little bit about empathy and leadership. So Amy, go ahead and tell us who you are and tell us a little bit about Media Cause.
Well, thank you, Kendra. Super happy to be here. So like Kendra mentioned, in the professional side of my life, I am the EVP of Creative of Media Cause, and we are a digital marketing and creative agency that works only with nonprofits. So if you think of all the things that a for-profit agency would do, creative website builds, strategy, campaigns, content, all of those things, we do them all, except we just work with nonprofits. So it's a bit of a different flavor, I suppose. And I came from the traditional world working with a lot of consumer brands and consumer goods companies, and then have been on the nonprofit side in the agency world for about a little over 5 years now. And it's been really, really nice getting to work with some amazing organizations. So that's been pretty cool. On the personal side, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. On the personal side, tell us that first, then I'll ask my question.
Personal side, like Kendra mentioned, I've got 2 kiddos. I've got a 6th grader and a 2nd grader. I've got 2 cats. I've got a dog. I've got a spouse.
You got a whole crew there.
So it's a lot of juggling on a daily basis.
Well, I wanted to ask you, just since you've been on both sides of the world, I guess, what's different about working with nonprofits than than I would know working with mostly for-profit organizations?
I think when I first joined about 5 years ago, the biggest difference that hit me right away was the pace. Mm-hmm. I had in working with some of the bigger companies that I'd worked with in the past, like Kimberly-Clark, I worked with a couple of their products, Kleenex and Viva, and I've worked with Krispy Kreme and Keurig. And while they can be behemoth organizations in themselves that have a lot of different departments that you have to go through, there always feels like there's some urgency. With nonprofits, while there is a sense of urgency in the respect that we need more donors, we need more folks on our email list, we need more people to engage, that can take a year and a half for them to get through because of how all of the different parts and pieces of an organization function or don't function in a connected way. And they have boards that they have to report to.
Yeah, that's different.
Right? So there's it's not an easy decision-making process in a nonprofit, the same way it might be if you're working with a CMO, he or she may have the decision-making power, and that's it. You get the green light. With a nonprofit, typically every decision has to go through multiple channels and multiple layers in order for you to get to where you're going. So that was a really big learning curve. This pace is incredibly different. And there's a lot more education, I think, that happens when you're working with a nonprofit than when you're working with a brand in just the basic fundamentals of why having a solid brand matters before putting a campaign out into market.
I wouldn't say that is, unique to nonprofits. Sadly. Yeah. But yes.
Yeah. So that's a big difference, on the process side of it. On the touchy-feely side of things, it is super rewarding when you are working on a client that you have to really understand the ins and outs of the issue they're working on. And A few years ago, we worked with an organization that funds research for pediatric heart transplant patients.
Wow.
And getting to speak to the parents and getting to speak to the physicians who are working on the research, that's a whole other level of, I mean, it can be really heavy, but it's also really rewarding. So there's that part too.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, is it uniquely rewarding? I mean, because sometimes we're having to work with clients that I'm like I always look for that thing, right? That kind of emotional connection. That's kind of my job, I guess, is to find, how to pull on somebody's heartstrings or their mind to get them to understand something in a fundamental way, or and want them, in most cases, to make them want to buy it. So I love looking for that thing, but sometimes when you're working with your 15th SaaS company or your 10th venture capital, and they're all lovely, but it's just like it gets hard to find that nugget. Is it uniquely rewarding because they're all so different in nonprofit and they all have that big thing at their center?
It is definitely rewarding. I think there's some of the same some of the same struggle. Like if we focus too much on the marketing aspect of it, the advertising aspect of it, and we're really only thinking about, okay, well, their objective is, to build their donor list. It's easy to get removed
Mm.
from what the mission of the organization is. So I think as long as we keep, oh, it sounds like the mowers are out there. So sorry about that. As long as we keep focused on like, okay, yes, we're building their donor list. That's the tactical ask,
Right.
but what's behind it? And what's behind it might be they're trying to bring there's one organization that's trying to improve the patient experience for kids in hospitals who are there for cancer treatments or there for extended periods of time by bringing in video game systems and by turning their gowns into capes and like doing all these things that help make it not so scary and cold and clinical.
Yeah.
And when you think about that and you're like, this work that I'm doing is actually helping these kids in a very tangible way, it's so much easier to get re-excited about the tactical stuff.
Yeah, looking for that why underneath the tactical what, I guess,
Yes.
is what you're talking about. Um, so let's talk about more to the topic of, I think this leads into it really well, but more to the topic about why I brought you here today. So I personally never imagined myself as a person who would be leading other people. I was pretty sure as an individual contributor, I was like, in fact, I'm maybe not even, I'm good at that, but I didn't think there was no way. There was no way. I was like, I don't want to manage people. And then came to Edgar Allan, and that just sort of happened and started happening. And now I have a team of 5, and it's fantastic. I really enjoy it. Did you always imagine yourself as a person who was going to lead or manage other people?
But no, I think I was exactly the same. There, my husband likes to remind me when I talk about something that he's like, do you remember 10 or 15 years ago when you were like, hell no, there's no, I just want to, so I'm a writer by trade. And I'm just like, I just want to write. I want to be coming up with the ideas. I want to be in the weeds. And then sort of the same thing happened slowly over time, as you progress, you take on maybe a mentor, and then that turns into taking on a report, and then that turns into, oh, well, here's a couple more, and then that turns into you have a team. um, did not expect to go there, but I also just love it and now cannot imagine not doing it.
I love something that you just said, which I actually really never thought about this, but the idea that having a mentor opens the door to mentoring others. If you can have that relationship with somebody, you can see how valuable it is to you. You get that first person view, and how they, if they're a really good one, how they kind of, help move you along gently, and or try to help you understand certain things. I had a really great mentor. Actually, my last EA live was with my mentor, Juliet D'Ambrosio, and we talked about naming. And so, yeah, I think that having that relationship with her, and I'm sure with your mentor, it's an interesting thing. That it gives you that context, and I think you start to realize, or at least I did, like being a leader of people is about helping people get to their goals, helping people progress on what they want, helping them sort of, even understand what path lays in front of them, because you have been there and you can see those things maybe more than others.
I totally agree.
What uh, what do you what do you find difficult about managing? I mean, I guess maybe what were things that were difficult at first, and the
Yeah.
things that you have maybe gotten over that hump.
I think one of the biggest challenges for me in the beginning was the shift from individual contributor to managing other folks. It's never, or at least for me, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't clear cut. It wasn't like one day you're doing the work and the next day you're not doing any of the work and you're just managing other people doing the work.
Yeah, it's not like just like the curtain comes down and it's like, okay, now I don't do that stuff anymore.
Yeah, it's more just like, okay, you're still doing a lot of the work, and it's an and.
Yeah.
And I think that balance for a while was really hard in figuring out where do I get my hands in it and where do I sort of pull back a little bit and let the other folks on my team run. And that was a really long learning curve for me. Especially as my team grew, and it wasn't just, it wasn't a division of work between me and one person or me and two people. It was how does my role change where I am coaching and leading and guiding them and staying involved, but I'm not doing as much. And like, how do I slowly, incrementally give them more responsibility and give them more of the ability to shape the work the way they want to, and not always just have to follow a path that I would have taken.
How did you learn to let go when you're reviewing someone's work as opposed to, doing the work? I still struggle with this one. I'm just like, I see it. I'm like, oh, but that could be, and I'm like, oh, but I have to step back. I can't just do it.
I mean, I think honestly, I still struggle with that too. So one of the folks on my team, she and I have been working together now almost since the beginning at Media Cause for about 5 years. And she at one point in the middle actually said, can you meddle a little bit less?
Well, that's great feedback though.
It was such good feedback. Everybody needs sort of that reality check every once in a while, because it's hard to know when you're the self-awareness, as much as you practice it, sometimes you have a blind spot. And so she's like, can we have conversations about this rather than you going into the GDoc and like saying, could you reword it like? So I was like, thank you. Now I'm going to be aware of that and try to pull back a little bit more. And that was really helpful. And also, I think being able to have that kind of dialogue with the folks on my team. So if they ever feel like I'm getting a little bit too in it, they can say, hold up, like, give me a little space. And I know I can take that and like, thank you for helping me be better to help you be better.
Michael actually has a really great question. Michael is from he's actually on my team. So he's so I'm gonna make you give the answer because he can hear my answer later. But he asks, what is the most challenging thing about managing a team and how do you deal with it? And that was kind of in line with what my next question was going to be to you as well.
I think it is learning and understanding each person's individual needs and their work styles and their preferences. It's hard. Like, it's always hard for me to say, how do you teach someone to be a manager? Because you manage each person on your team differently based on what they need. So it's not like there's a singular playbook. There's guidelines, but I think that's a hard piece of it, because the way that you would give feedback to one person on your team or the way that you relate to one person on your team may be completely different than the way you need to do that with another person on your team. So figuring out their styles and then making sure that you are adjusting your own style to their needs is hard. And I don't always get it right, because sometimes I'm like, oh, well, this is the way I like to deliver something, but I've got to think about what's the way they need to receive it. So that's a hard one. And I think it just comes back to continually checking in with the person and checking in with yourself also. Like, am I doing something because it's the way I want to do it or the way I would want to receive it? Or am I doing it because it's the way that I know they would want to receive it and it's best for them?
That's amazing. And I wanted to ask, how you kind of figure those things out. Do you do at Media Cause, do you do things like personality tests like DISC or Myers-Briggs, or, to try to learn about the people on your team? Or is it more of an organic kind of process? You're just spending time with them and you're taking notes and you're kind of giving that kind of gut feel.
It's a yes and. We
Gotcha.
we do Myers-Briggs with everybody when they are as part of the onboarding process and have like a repository of everybody's profiles. But I will say that I find it hard to use those on a day-to-day basis. We have 72 people at the company. I can't like possibly.
It would be hard to keep in your head, oh, he's the architect.
Yes.
And he's the entertainer.
Like impossible. I have 8 direct people on my team, and I wouldn't even be able to keep the 8 of those straight.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that might play into a little bit of it, but more of it is really just getting to know them. And there are some times where we'll do. I've done this a couple times with the folks on my team, where it's a sheet that's like, tell me. It's a bit of a coaching worksheet. What do you love about what you're doing right now? What do you wish you didn't have to do? What do you get up in the morning dreading is coming this week? What gets you the most jazzed that you wish you could do every day? What's the best piece of feedback you received recently, and how was it received? Like, so every once in a while, I think I've done it twice in the last couple of years, we'll do those. I need to get better about doing it routinely. It's kind of just when I think of it right now.
Sure.
But that kind of stuff is really helpful too, because then they're able to tell me, and then we can have a conversation about it, and I can get curious and ask, oh, tell me why this thing really bugged you, or, oh, tell me why this one got you really excited and you wish you could spend a week doing it. And with those kind of things, I'm able to figure out what they like, what they don't like, how they respond to different things. And it just feels so much more organic.
Grace says, Amy sounds like a great manager. Yes. Yes, she is. A great example of really conscientious management. I wanted to ask with that check. Okay, I want that checklist. I want that list of things. Yeah. And also, with that, what are some of the things that you find sort of surprising or useful for helping people grow and evolve and be their best selves? I mean, that checklist sounds like a good blueprint for a truly great one-on-one. Do you guys do run-on-ones and, yearly assessments, or, how do you guys run that stuff?
Yeah, so we do both. One-on-ones, I usually have them some with some folks it's every 2 weeks, with some folks it's every week. Just sort of depends on the need and the person. And I always like to make them, I don't like having them be work check-ins. And I think that's one of the really big pieces. If I need to know how you're doing on a project, on a specific project, because of whatever reason, like I'll virtually tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, how is project X, Y, and Z going? What's the latest? Some of that will come into the one-on-one, but it really needs to be more, for me, it's like, how are you? What's going on?
Mm.
How was that trip that you took 2 weeks ago? I haven't had a chance to really ask you about the vacation yet. Like, tell me more. How's your dog? I know your dog wasn't feeling well last week. So having it be a personal check-in as much or more so than a work check-in allows, I think, the other person to also then feel comfortable bringing up things that they might be stuck on, that there might be challenges with, so that we can try to problem solve together. So I try to use one-on-ones more as conversation, as collaboration, as just spending time with the other person.
Right. Yeah. I like that idea of not making it a project check-in, because you have plenty of opportunities for that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's why there are status meetings.
Yep.
You have other things for that.
I've got a couple of good questions here that they might be both connected from Webflail. And they ask, do you think, first off, do people choose to be leaders, or do you think other people choose them? And that kind of goes along with this idea of, there being, at some places, maybe not 2 tracks for advancement too. Like there's individual contributor, and then the only way that you can rise through an organization is to be a manager. But just back to the first question, do you think people choose to be leaders, or do you think other people choose them?
It's a really good question. There is a quote or a theory that I cannot tell you who it's from. It's like, you can you can tell somebody that you're a manager, but only somebody else can tell you that you're a leader, that you are a leader. Because
Oh, wow.
it's like being a manager is a position, but being a leader is a quality. And I've always thought that's a really interesting difference. And of course, they can both be the same, like be existing in the same person. But
Mhm.
I don't know if it's a conscious decision to, like, you can consciously choose to apply for a management position.
Sure.
But in order for you to be a leader, I think it has to come from somebody else wanting to follow or wanting to learn from. It's not necessarily like a self-appointed thing. I don't know.
I mean, I guess it can be, but, that's not what real leadership is.
Right, right.
Um, well, the secondary question, to that one, and it might be I think this is specifically about managers, but, Webflow wants to know, what's the trait you most
Ooh.
deplore in other managers? I wanna hear the dirt.
Oh my goodness. Hmm. The most deplore. That's a strong word.
Yeah, you really hate. Like
Oh, I hate.
Maybe it's things that you can see in other people that aren't successful, that are less that are, or that are counteractive to what your, vision of being, a good leader or a good manager is.
It's okay. So it is something that I think is counter that I also struggle with. So
Okay,
personal.
perfect. Yeah.
And it is trying, wanting or trying to fix things
Uh-huh.
because as a manager or as a leader or as somebody who has been in a similar situation to what somebody else on the team might be going through, I can see how something might play out. And my gut instinct is to want to go in there and like say, no, 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 don't do it this way. Do it this way. Or no, I've got a better idea. And
Yeah.
and I do it sometimes and I'm like, gosh, I shouldn't have done that because it doesn't let the other person do the problem solving for themselves. And it doesn't help them grow. And the only way to grow and learn is by actually doing, not by just somebody telling you what to do and you going and implementing it, but like
Mhm.
thinking through it and having the back and forth. And maybe you try something and it doesn't work. And that's fine too.
And having the joy or at least the benefit of failure, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I love that. That reminds me of something, we talk at Grellen a lot about the difference between kindness and niceness.
Yes.
That they're two different things, and in my opinion, niceness is performative, right? It's self-centered, it conforms, it follows rules, it kinda niceness is catching more flies with honey, and it's kind of rooted in fear, right? Fear of being perceived badly or
Yep.
coming off badly. Kindness is outwardly focused. It invests in growth. It invests in the betterment of people and places, and it does the hard things, even if it's uncomfortable. Um,
I
what do
love
you what do you think about that, and how does that play into building and maintaining an organization, or being a leader in an organization?
I love the way you described the differences between kindness and niceness. And I think I'm very aligned in
Mhm.
that niceness is rooted in fear. It is, I'm going to be nice to you so that you like me, so that I don't ruffle any feathers, so that I can avoid this hard thing and just stay in a place of comfort. And, but it doesn't necessarily benefit really either side.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the kindness piece is about Brene Brown, who I am like a super fan of, has says clear is kind.
Mm.
Clarity being not necessarily there's radical candor which can sometimes go very wrong, so not necessarily like taking it to that level,
Right.
being clear. And when there is something that goes astray, when you need to deliver feedback, the kind thing to do for the other person is to have that uncomfortable conversation and let them know, or
Mhm.
to be willing to be on the receiving end of the uncomfortable conversation because it's for your own growth. And I think that does come into being a manager and being a leader, because if you shy away from those conversations, you can't help the people on your team. And I don't think it goes very far in building trust either if
Mhm.
folks can't trust that you are willing to engage in those honest conversations with them, they're not really going to trust you with much else either.
No, I think that's really good insight. Well, okay, so we're about halfway through this, and I want to make sure that we get to talking about empathy and
Yeah.
also Empathy Lab as
Yeah.
well. Let's start with empathy in general. What is empathy? What is empathy, and what is it not?
Okay. So there are lots and lots of definitions floating out there. If you were to go to 5 dictionaries, you would probably find 5 different definitions of empathy. The one I like to use the most goes back to Brene Brown again. And she phrases it as empathy isn't walking in someone else's shoes, which I think a lot of us tend to think it is from a very surface level. If you're empathizing with somebody, you're taking on their experience, you're seeing something through their eyes. But what she proposes is that's impossible. Like, I can't actually walk in your shoes. I don't have the experiences that you've had. I don't have the context. That is like a impossibility. What I can do, where how she describes empathy, is I can walk alongside you and I can listen and I can believe what you're telling me about your experience. And I love that definition of empathy because it's 2 people walking together, not one person trying to inhabit the body of another, which sounds like, really weird sci-fi sort of territory.
Fair, yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how I like to define empathy because it's part of a relationship.
And I can, imagine that plays in a lot to the way that you manage and the way that you lead. And I know that you have also a relationship with something called Empathy Lab. And so what is that?
So Empathy Lab, it's an amazing company. It's run by a few, I'm going to say amazing again, amazing humans, Shelton Davis and Teresa Ward. And it is a company that is founded and built, and its purpose is to spread and teach empathy, like very basically help everybody build their empathy muscle. And the core framework, actually, I've got a slide that we can bring up.
That would be great.
Yeah. So the core framework of Empathy Lab is built around these 10 different skills. That's called the Empathy Decathlon. And it's a decathlon. There are 10 skills, but it's also because Shelton was a decathlete. And so he was able to use his own experience. He's also a UX professional, and that plays so much into this because empathy is so important in UX.
Yes.
Yes. So he built this 10-step framework of micro skills that contribute to 2 kinds of empathy. There's me empathy, which is self-empathy, and then there's we empathy, which is collective empathy. And so what Empathy Lab does is hold different kinds of workshops with organizations or with teams to teach these skills, as well as every Wednesday, there's what Shelton calls the Empathy Athlete Community, where just individual folks, anybody who wants to get together and practice some of these skills can join for an hour every Wednesday, be in community, learn some stuff, have some really great conversation, and come out of it strengthening their empathy muscle.
And it's something that that muscle that you have to work over and over again, I assume.
It is. I think that there's a perception that like either you are an empathetic person or you're not, but it's
right.
not a characteristic. It is something that you can absolutely grow over time, and you've got to practice it just the same way that I think anybody has to practice any skill that they want to get better at, whether it's running or playing the violin or like not yelling at my daughter for how messy her room is.
Right.
So it's the same thing with empathy.
Well, let's talk about this framework and go through the micro skills here. I guess we'll start at 1 and the me skills, energy.
Yeah. So the me skills it's really built on the premise. It's, put your own oxygen mask on first kind of deal. You've got to be able to be empathetic with yourself and understand where you are before you can do the same for others. So those me skills are really designed to help you figure out what state you're in. You're in. And I mean, if you happen to be in the bathroom while you're doing it, that's fine.
Also good.
Also good. But really figuring out, okay, so the first two skills, for example, energy and baggage. What is lifting me up today and what might be weighing me down today?
Oh, wow. Okay.
With self-awareness, it's, if I know those things, how are those affecting me? Taking inventory. If I know that I'm feeling a little bit sluggish today because I didn't get enough sleep, and that I am not super energized and that I've got this baggage holding me down for a big presentation that's coming up tomorrow, in that inventory stage, I might say, maybe I'm not in the best place right now to go have that really hard conversation with someone on my team.
Right. Yeah.
That's that connection point, because you want to show up well for yourself, but you also need to show up in a supportive way for the other person.
Do you run yourself through these first four things like periodically? I'm sure after doing this for a while, but it's just like automatic. You're like, okay, energy check, baggage check. Do you do something like that?
So we do it as a group every Wednesday in Empathy Lab practice. And I will do it before, like even before this conversation, I was like, where's my energy at today? And my energy was, oh my gosh, it's Friday. It was
same.
Right. It was, I get to talk to Kendra and this is really exciting. And I'm like,
also same.
So I was able to say, okay, am I at a good place where I feel like I can show up, more or less like with my normal energy? I was like, yeah, no, I think I can. I think this is a good time for this today. So
well, and in some cases of things you can't change, like, like you could have obviously emailed me this morning and say, man, I really can't do this today. And it would not have been a big deal. Right. But in things that you can't change, what do you do with that information? If the answer is my energy is shit right now, or but I still have to do the thing,
Yeah. I think the best thing to do in those kind of situations, if you feel safe enough doing it, is let the other people or person know, like, hey, I know we've got this big client presentation today. Before we go into it, I'm going to let you know, I feel like crap. And my energy is probably not going to be as high as it normally is. Would you be willing to help me out? I'm going to stay a little bit quieter than I usually am.
Right.
Do you have enough energy today to make up for some of that I might usually be? Can you take a couple of these parts for me? Because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do it justice today. And it helps if the other person also is in touch with their own self-awareness while they're at.
Those questions as well. Yeah. Or else they're going to be like, what? Wait.
And that's where like the community aspect of that comes in.
Yeah.
And it kind of shifts from that me to we. Like nothing is a one person effort. You got to be able to have the other people that you can lean on to.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bring the slide back if I can. There we are.
Yeah.
All right. So we have energy, we have baggage, we have self-awareness and inventory on the me skills. What happens at this me to we transition point?
So hearing is that first connection point. We can almost, in that situation of, if you don't have the energy, you're not in a good frame of mind to be in that meeting and leading the presentation, for example. The hearing piece, I would want the other person. So let's say you're both going through this practice, right? You and I, we are empathy decathletes. That is where you on the receiving end hearing is, okay, I hear what Amy is saying. I hear that she's not feeling this right now. How can I move to number 6 and respond? What is the empathetic way to respond, to support, to engage in this dialogue that we need to have before this big meeting happens? And so that's when you start to get into, what is the best way to respond? Should I ask a question, which is number 7? Do I think that in this situation, the best response is saying, oh, I'm sorry, I know how hard that feels, which is the like actual act of empathy. I know how hard that feels to feel like this before a meeting. I've been there. It's okay. And as you go through these different pieces, so there is the question asking in a different situation, for example, like if there's a conflict, this part, the asking, meaning making, and feedback is really key of the we skills, because that's the place where instead of reacting, which is just a natural instinct, you pause. That
Mm.
hearing is a bit of a pause too. That's like that
Mhm.
big break. Let me get curious. Let me ask some more questions first before I start making meaning out of what that person said. So, how do I help myself better understand so that I can be more present and more helpful to them? That's where that asking comes in. The meaning making is then based on what I heard. Here is the understanding that I'm taking away from it. And you can use some classic empathetic listening kind of techniques in this part to repeat something back to the other person. What I think I heard you say was, am I getting that right? Or it sounds like you're really not feeling it right now because of X, Y, and Z. Is that what's going on? And then it allows them to take back and to join the conversation again, and to either agree, or clarify more. And all of that really creates a dialogue that is empathetic towards both sides of that conversation.
And I totally understand the idea of empathy being clarity in that
Yeah.
context, because you're, taking the time to ask and not guessing,
Yeah.
not assuming, you know, because a lot of bad things could happen out of that. And then lead at the end. That's just the end point that, what you hopefully get to.
Yeah. And I mean, this whole thing, even though it's laid out sort of in a linear fashion, it's really
Mhm.
cyclical.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's a continual practice. The lead piece may be, now that you have all the information, you are in a position, you know where you are based on your self inventory, you know where the other people are based on these conversations, the dialogue, the meaning making. And leading is really, you have all the information to have a productive next step. So it's not necessarily like, oh, I've got it, I'm going to go, stand at the front of the squad like this. It I have I have the information that I need. I feel comfortable. The other person has the information they need. They feel comfortable. We can now go forward together.
Gotcha. I've got a question that I think relates to what you've just been saying. How do you deal with reports that are not empathetic toward you? It should be a two-way street, right? Michael asks.
Yeah. No, Michael, it's a good question. It's frustrating for sure. There's that. Um, part of what we work on actually in Empathy Lab is how to be empathetic towards people that you disagree with,
Oh,
or
wow, yeah. I would
which
love
is,
to hear more about this.
I'm not good at it. It's really hard
But you're working on it, so that's the
working on
point,
it.
yeah.
Um, and people who have less practice with their empathy skills than you might.
Mhm.
And what it comes down to is you you can only control you.
Right.
You can't make other people be or act or behave or believe something differently than they do. So you still have to extend that empathy, and it may not be received in the way that you'd like it. That dialogue may not You may not get that same level of them engaging in meaning making as you are, but I think it's still incumbent upon you as an empathy practitioner or a leader or a manager to be the one who's setting that example. And it's
Mhm.
like, that's hard. It's hard when something's not reciprocated. So um, it takes its toll. Like, it can be really draining.
Right.
But in order to keep reinforcing that that is the kind of relationship and the kind of environment and the kind of team you want to have, it's important to try to stay in it as much as you can.
It's almost, I mean, this probably sounds trite, but it's almost trust the process. I mean, if you keep kind of going at it in that way, eventually either you're going to find out that this person is not someone that you connect with at all, and there's going to be some kind of, there's going to be some action taken there, or you're going to come to understanding, through just practicing that, and being that way over and over again. So, um, did you want to? I know we talked when we talked about doing this call about something about empathy and baggage and kind of empathetic role play. Is that something you wanted to talk
Oh, yeah.
through? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if y'all are interested, we could do like a quick 3-minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay. So there's 2 slides. There's an energy and baggage slide. I can walk you through real quick.
Okay. Pablo, do we have that slide? Yes.
We
It's
go to
not
the
that
next.
one. Is it next on the slide
Yep, it should
deck?
be. Yes. Oh, that's me. Ha ha ha. Sorry.
There we go. We got it. Is that it?
That's it. Okay. So energy and baggage, they are technically 2 skills in the decathlon, but they are practiced hand in hand. So energy, there are 4 different types of energy that when you're doing this sort of self-assessment, you want to go through and think about. There is your physical energy, emotional energy, your mental energy, and your spiritual energy. And you can have energy in all 4. You can have energy in 1. You can have energy in none. It's just sort of noticing where they are showing up for you on any given day in any given moment. And it's a really fun experiment if you do this consistently, like every morning for a week, to see how your energy and baggage change over the course of the week. And sometimes you'll find there's something really consistent, and sometimes you'll find like, oh man, every Tuesday I'm really energetic because I have tennis practice. And you'll be able to pinpoint the things that bring you energy and the things that weigh you down, and you can start seeing patterns. And that's always really fun to get those like little light bulbs.
Yeah. What do
Yeah.
you do when you have that information? Like, what do you do with that?
Uh, I mean, for me, it's just for me, it's just information, honestly. It's like, oh, I know why I feel so good when I wake up on Tuesdays now, and why maybe Thursdays don't feel as good. Maybe it's not because anything's bad about Thursdays. I just don't have tennis practice.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think just knowing why is is helpful. Like, I guess
Yeah.
you're not just wondering. You're like, what is wrong with me right now?
Yeah.
It's no. I understand. I
Yeah.
guess I was saying more like you could say on Tuesday I know that I'm going to go to tennis practice, and then if I have a presentation to give on Tuesday, I am going to bring a
Yeah.
happier, better self to that. Or like for me, we have this content crew meeting every Wednesday at 10 a.m. and that's everybody on the content team, and it sometimes involves some project managers and some other folks, and it is the best call of my week because we just and it literally rarely has anything to do with work. So it's, we talk about our cats, or we're talking about books, or where something happened in Slack in the last day and oh my gosh, did you see that? And it is just a fabulous time to connect. And so I find myself on Wednesdays after that meeting feeling very connected with the folks that work for me and that I work with. And then also just like ready to tackle the second half of the week. Like my hump day is just like leveled out by that call, I guess.
I love that.
So
Maybe
yeah, I think
yeah. You can schedule things around that too. If you know that like that's such a great energy day for you, if there's something that
mhm.
takes a whole hell of a lot of energy that you want to be able to bring all of that into, like do it on a Tuesday afternoon.
All right. Sorry, I cut you off. What else is there to this?
That is okay. All right. So you've got this energy practice. So when you do an energy and baggage inventory, what we'll do is if you want to grab a piece of paper and write energy on one side, baggage on the other side, draw a line down the middle. So
Okay.
obviously the first side, think about what's bringing you energy for the day. The other side of it is baggage. And just like there was sort of a scale on the energy side
Mhm.
or the different sections, there are different types of baggage that you can be carrying also. So you can be carrying individual baggage, which is something that is, uh, you wake up with a migraine. That is some individual baggage that's going to be hard to shed.
That's some heavy individual baggage. I know from experience.
Yes. You can have community baggage, which is that it could be something that's going on in your workplace, something that's going on in your family, something that's going on in your literal community. There's systemic baggage, which is just thinking about, all the stuff that's sort of effed up right now in the country. That's pretty heavy. And global baggage can literally be anything going on across the world that you're feeling the weight of, whether it's what's still going on in Ukraine, or you're thinking of climate change because something came up in the news. So being able to identify what baggage you're carrying, but also where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer it is into you, the more control you have over how you carry it. The farther away it is from you, if it's global baggage, you really can't affect the global baggage. You can't change a war, but you can shift your perspective on it, and you can say, yes, this is really heavy, but I'm going to put it down right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that can feel really hard, because it can feel like you're saying, I don't care. But we, as individuals, there's only so much baggage each of us can carry. And sometimes when there's something really heavy that's closer to you that you can affect, that there is something you can do that you can have an impact on, you got to focus your attention there and put down some of the other stuff for a little bit. So this micro skill, that piece of it helps you identify what you're carrying and also where it's coming from. And it's information that we can then decide what to do with.
That's amazing.
So we can take like, a minute if anybody wants to do the energy and baggage practice and just write down in 2 columns what's bringing you energy, what's bringing you baggage. And if anybody wants to share in the chat what's coming up for them on both sides, totally welcome to do that too.
Yeah, I will certainly do it here, and we can at least review mine. But yeah, I would encourage anybody else that's out there. I see a few folks that I know. Rosie's out there, Mason's out there. Hopefully they're still with us. I know that we went over the hour here because we had some stuff to do earlier, and so I think people have dropped off for their like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock meetings. But all right, so tell me again what we need to do. It's I have a piece of paper in front of me.
Okay, so draw a line down the middle.
Gotcha.
Do your energy on one side, your baggage on the other side.
Okay.
You can get as specific or as general as you want. So on the energy side, for example, you could say, slept great. Right. That would be an example of something that is bringing you physical energy today. Or you could go super more specific, and the energy is, it is, well, the sun looks like it's coming out. It is sunny outside, and I'm going to go for a walk with my dog later. And that's bringing me energy, which might be physical energy, or it might be spiritual energy, because a walk with your dog brings you a lot of joy.
I don't know how, but I got bumped out of the screen. Yes, I'm back. But yeah, I could hear you. I just was like panicking for a second. My energy went down because I thought, oh no.
That was a little bit back.
All right. Yeah, got a little bit back. Okay, so that's energy, and then baggage on the other side.
Yep. Baggage on the other side. What's feeling heavy? What's weighing you down? It can be worry. It can be stress from something. It can be, if there's something going on later that you're not really looking forward to. It can be thinking about the community baggage if you're feeling disconnected from someone that you really value their relationship. Any of that can weigh you down as baggage.
Gotcha. Okay. So while you were doing that, I was writing my stuff down.
Awesome.
So what do I do now?
Now we just share.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Okay. Perfect. Well, does anybody else out there want to share theirs? Actually, I'll share mine. And then if anybody else wants to, while I'm talking about mine, then we can kind of go through theirs in the chat. So that'll give you a chance to kind of, write it down. So I put on the energy side just this weekend with like a lot of exclamation points behind it, because it has been a very busy week here at Edgar Allan, and I in a little, like a teeny tiny bit burnout. So and having this conversation actually is another one that I was like, yes, this conversation, this is exciting and very informative, and I love talking to you. My family is here in town. My parents are. They came to see my daughter's first band concert last night, and so they're hanging out until tomorrow morning, and that is always so fun, and I love spending time with them. So that's giving me energy, and I get to go and get tacos at my favorite place tonight. So I mean, all the energy. Also margaritas, so also nice. So so I'm looking forward to that. On the baggage side, because my family's here, they're sleeping in my bed, and so I'm sleeping in this office on the floor with my husband. So I didn't sleep all that great last night. It was not awesome, but I mean, it's fine. I have big deadlines looming in the next week that are concerning me in a big way. Like there's lots going on, hence the super crazy week. And because of all those things and having to be really tied to my computer and really on a lot of phone calls, I am having a little bit of baggage about not giving my daughter enough attention this week, although she has grandparents here, so I probably shouldn't worry about that. So there we go. I'm offloading a little bit of baggage there. She's got somebody else to hang out with. But there's where I am. And actually, to be honest with you, it feels nice to like tell someone, to be like, I'm really happy about these things. And oh my gosh. And I think, I don't know, this is just me, but I just feel like I should be grateful for all the energy things. I'm like so grateful. And then I'm like, but I can complain a little bit and it doesn't, negate the energy stuff, the good stuff. So that's nice.
I love that. It's just like saying it out loud. Oh, okay. Yeah. And they're both allowed to be here.
Yes. They're both allowed to exist at the same time. And it doesn't mean that you are a lesser person because you are carrying around those other things and have, 5 minutes to tell somebody about it. That's why having like really good friends is a good thing too. I mean, not, having someone that you can talk to, that's a group to talk about empathy, but also somebody that like, if I wanted to get off this call and like call my best friend and say, oh my God, I had such a terrible week, I could do that. And then also, and she would tell me about her terrible week. And then, we would both feel better. So.
Yes. Friends are amazing.
Okay. Oh, okay. That must have been from before. Sorry. I appear to be, everybody can see me now, right? Okay, cool. All right. All right. So, if does anybody else out there in the audience want to share their energy and baggage? And if not, that's no big deal, but we can move on to last couple of questions. We've got a few minutes left to talk.
Yeah. And if no one does, I mean, A-okay.
Yeah.
It's a practice that I just find super helpful, even just to get me to think about where I'm at in the day. So use it however it feels best for you.
I know. I think, you could do that just alone, like with your own piece of paper, just, taking stock of your own. And Michael says, energy, it's the weekend. Yes. Oh gosh, they're coming in. Okay. So Rosie says, no deadlines today, so plenty of good energy over. Yay, Rosie, that's amazing.
Oh, so your energy is the absence of baggage.
I like that. Yeah. let us all hope that our energy is the absence of baggage today. Mason asked a good question earlier when we were talking more about management. He said that, moving into management is difficult. How do you develop that as a skill? I mean, we talked about management and leadership and choosing, but let's say that you're moving into management. How do you get ready for that? How do you develop that muscle?
I think what you mentioned earlier about having a mentor, not everybody is lucky enough to have a good one, but if you are able to find someone or happen to be in a circumstance where you just got lucky and have a great person that you're working with that you can learn from, I found that was how I learned a lot of how to manage, was by watching my manager work with his team and how he related to them, and what he was always trying to make them better, me included, being on his team. And so what I learned about management from that was, managing isn't just about delegating and checking on tasks and making sure that things are, right on a project. Management is seeing the people and identifying their strengths and coaching those areas where they need a little bit of help, and sometimes pushing them a little bit more than they think they can be, but of course in a very loving way, because you know that they can do it. Watching, I think, is the best way. But in the absence of that, if you don't have a really great person that you can learn from who is right there, I don't know. I'm a book nerd, so I did a lot of reading also on management practices and styles and all of the various different things that come into management, like how to be a good communicator, just sort of those basic human things.
Right.
How to be a good communicator, how to, like empathy skills, any sort of those soft skills, which I think is a terrible name because they are not soft. Like,
yeah, right. Yeah. Why do they call it that?
I don't know. Humaning
Human
skills.
skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those things you need any time, but I think they become even more important when you are responsible for other people. And so just learning as much as you can, finding a network. If you don't have like a direct manager who you can learn from, find a network of other people who maybe are even in the same first manager role as you are. What are they going through? Who and what are they learning from? All of those things help. And I think a lot of it just comes back to that connection point.
Are there any books that you would recommend? Whether specifically about management or about, those other kind of humaning skills?
I'm looking at my bookshelves.
I know I read one earlier, like maybe last year. I think it was called The 1 Minute Manager or something.
Ooh,
Was it called that? I've seen that one. I'm trying to remember the name of it. But sorry, what do you see on your bookshelf that seems worth recommending?
I don't. So we're actually doing this as a group at work. Brene Brown's Dare to Lead,
Oh yeah. Okay.
just stellar. So I don't have it on my bookshelf because it's in my other office downstairs. There's a book called The Coaching Habit. Michael Bungay Stanier, I believe, is the author's name, and it's about developing coaching as a manager and how to have those relational kind of engagements with the people on your team rather than transactional. And I thought that was a really helpful one as well. And it gives you prompts and just different practices that you can bring into conversations.
Pablo found the book I was thinking of, The
Ooh,
Making of a Manager. That is
awesome.
The 1 Minute Manager is one that so this is how my brain works. Amazon suggests that one to me all the time, but I've never read it, and it might be crap. So sorry about that. That's not a recommendation. But The Making of a Manager by Julie Zhou is really amazing, and she talks about it from a perspective of a first time manager and as a reluctant manager as well, which is a really nice perspective.
Yes, it is.
Pablo also said something nice, which is, with regard to getting a mentor, just ask. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Just whoever you look up to. Most people are really open and probably really flattered that you would think that they are, that competent and could help someone.
Totally.
We have about a minute, and I just wanted to just kind of do that time check. But while we wrap, I wanted to give you an opportunity. I know you do some coaching, you do some speaking. Is there anything upcoming that we can learn more from you at any events, any more live streams, anything like that?
The only one I know of right now will be in October. I just heard that I was accepted to speak at the Mindful Leader Conference in Washington, D.C.
Ooh, congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. So that's exciting. It's like the end of September, beginning of October, those first few days. So I will be in DC speaking at that. And I don't know, hopefully more fun stuff comes up between now and then.
Absolutely. Well, we will keep in touch, and I will as soon as I hear about more ways to connect with you and get in front of you to listen to this great advice. I will definitely be posting it on our socials and on Netgrounds. But just want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great treat and an energy giving kind of experience. So thanks for everybody else for who joined and asked great questions. This has been a really wonderful interactive one, and I hope everybody has a great Friday and rest of their weekend.
Thank you so much, Kendra. This was awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.